Hello, and a very, very warm welcome to my YouTube today. My name's Chris, and we're taking a look today at Wing Commander Robert Roland Stanford Tuck, Dso Dfc and 2 bars. It has to be said, after a less than stellar school career, he left St Dunstan's College, Catford in 1932 to join the Merchant Navy as a sea cadet aboard the SS Marconi from the 19th of May 1933, before then joining the RAF on a short service commission as an acting pilot officer in 1935. Following flying training, Tuck joined 65 Squadron in September 1935 as an acting probationary pilot officer. He became a pilot officer on probation in September 1936, and his pilot officer rank was confirmed in early 1937. In September 1938 he was promoted to flying officer, and in May 1940 he was posted to 92 Squadron based at Croydon as a flight commander flying Spitfires. Bob Tuck led his first combat patrol on the 23rd of May 1940 over Dunkirk, claiming 3 German fighters shot down. The following day he shot down 2 German bombers, and as aerial fighting intensified over the next 2 weeks, his score rapidly mounted. Bob Tuck was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross on the 11th of June and received it from King George V. The D.F.C. award by King George V was made at RAF Hornchurch on the 28th of June. The citation for this award, published in the London Gazette, read, "This officer led his flight in company with his squadron on 2 offensive patrols over northern France. As a result, one of these patrols, in which the squadron engaged a formation of some 60 enemy aircraft, the squadron commander was later reported missing and the flight commander wounded and in hospital. Flight Lieutenant Tuck then assumed command, and on the following day led the squadron, consisting of only 8 aircraft, on a further patrol, engaging the enemy formation of 50 aircraft. During these engagements the squadron has shot down 10 enemy aircraft and possibly another 24. Throughout the combats this officer has displayed a great dash and gallantry." May I offer a massive thank you to all my new subscribers. It really is very heartening and gives me great encouragement to continue making these films and putting them out there with the sort of a historical content that I enjoy putting together. It would be really appreciated if you haven't already subscribed, if you could consider subscribing. It really means a lot, and I really appreciate all your support. Thank you very, very much. We're shortly going to hear an interview that Bob Tuck gave post-war, which is quite enlightening, quite interesting. Well, I would say very interesting. And it's also worth bearing in mind that back in October the 24th, 1935, number 3 Flying School, Royal Air Force Station, Grantham, an Avro Tutor biplane trainer sat on the end of the runway. In the front cockpit is a student pilot officer with 13 hours of dual instruction behind him. Obviously a slow learner. If he doesn't do well on this flight, he will be sent home. His name is Robert Tuck. And it was a newspaper ad that caught Tuck's attention in September 1935 while he was on leave at his father's home in Catford. He decided to heed its call, fly with the RAF.
And everyone knows their names: Johnson, Deere, Milan, Bader. One of the few who will never be forgotten is Stanford Tuck.
My name's Robert Stanford Tuck. They used to call me Lucky Tuck. The weather was very similar to what it is today. It was beautiful, cloudless weather the whole time in 1940, and very hot.
What are your feelings towards the German pilots of 1940?
Oh, I think they were just doing the job they had to do at the time. I have many friends amongst them now in Germany that I see very frequently.
Such as?
General Gallant, Adolf Gallant, he's a great friend of mine. He comes over and spends weekends with me, and I always drop in and see him when I'm over there. We have a lot of fun together.
Those are your feelings towards the fighter pilots. What about the bomber pilots?
Well, I don't think, aerial warfare is a very impersonal affair, and all you're trying to do the whole time is outwit the other fellow, and when you outwit him, plunk, you shoot him down.
We're going to hear an interview, or really Robert Stansford Tuck giving us an insight into some of his wartime flying adventures and experiences. And this part of my film will then be followed by a brief look at Stansford Tuck getting shot down. And then in part two, I propose to make a life and times of Robert Stansford Tuck from when he was shot down, when he was taken prisoner, where he spent his time and how his experiences affected the rest of his life, and that'll form part two. So I hope this will be certainly what he has to say is very interesting, and then we'll take another look in the second film at the experience he had after he was shot down in 1942.
When war broke out, I had been in the RAF some 4 years and was delighted when I was posted as a flight commander to a new Spitfire squadron which had just been formed. We put in some pretty intensive training, and long before the spring of 1940 arrived, we were right up to the mark and ready to go. Our first combat chanced to be with a large formation of Me-109s, Nazi single-seater fighters. It took place over the coast of North Belgium in May last year, and the first thing I noticed after we had closed with them was the air seemed to be full of planes milling around. I singled one out and was lucky enough to shoot him down in a wood near Saint-Omer. On that first meeting, the squadron shot down 11 Huns for the loss of one of our pilots, who had crash-landed on the beach. That wood near Saint-Omer will be one of the first places I shall visit when we have won the war, because while out on our second patrol that same afternoon, I shot down 2 Me-110s right alongside it. I had picked the first one out of a large bunch covering a bunch of Ju-87s which were dive-bombing the harbour, and I forced him to crash land alongside the wreckage of my morning Me-109. Incidentally, the pilot of that Me-110 very nearly put an early end to my fighting career with nothing more than a pistol. I had circled him very low to make sure he had crashed when he stepped out of the cockpit, apparently unhurt, and took a pot shot at me with his pistol. It was either wizard shooting or the world's biggest fluke, for that shot went through my windscreen within an inch or two of my head. I turned quickly and dealt with him, and as I did so, I saw that another 110 had been snooping along behind me over the treetops. He opened up with cannon fire and put a shell through my fuselage, and I did a tight turn, squirted at him with what ammunition I had left, and he went down to crash alongside his 2 friends. As you can imagine, I was pretty bucked with that bag of 3 for my first day in action, and a couple of Dornier 17s the next day, and another of the same type on the third day, made me quite a lot happier. The second 3 were bagged over the Dunkirk, Calais, Boulogne area, and the last affair was a regular shooting match. I remember I arrived back at my base with no oil, no glycol, and the sliding hood and side door of my Spitfire shot away. I had a cannon shot through the tail, which left only 2 inches play on the elevators with which to land, and I had no flaps, no brakes, and a flat tire. I did somehow manage to put it down, all right, and as I finished my landing run, the engine seized up. That Spitfire was too shot up and damaged to fly again, but I was lucky enough to escape with only a slight wound in the thigh, caused by a bit of metal flying off the rudder bar. When the hectic days of Dunkirk had ended, the squadron was sent into a quiet sector to rest and reorganize, and I remember a particularly enjoyable incident which happened one morning around the middle of August. Up at 15,000 feet over Cardiff, I picked up 3 Ju-88s which were heading as if for Ireland. My stern attacks didn't seem to make the slightest impression on them, so I headed past them, turned, and carried out head-on attacks. That worked all right, but by the time I had accounted for 2 of them, the third had disappeared in the clouds. A few days later, when I was on my way to an aerodrome to get some of the holes in my Spitfire patched up, I struck the first of the big daylight blitzes on the south coast and ran into a couple of Ju-88s off Beachy Head. I chased one of them about 35 miles out to sea before I shot him down. By that time, we were right down on the water, and as I turned and climbed, the other Hun opened fire at me with his cannon. He shot my oil and glycol tanks away and part of my propeller, which caused excessive engine vibration. I climbed for all I was worth and pushed the engine flat out. Very soon it was on fire, but even so, it got me back 60 miles before it went up in smoke and I had to bail out. I was smothered in oil and couldn't see a thing. Perhaps it was just as well, for if I'd realized I was only a few hundred feet up, I'd probably never have had the nerve to jump. As it was, my chute opened with a bump, and a second or so before my feet hit the ground. Some observer corps men I spoke to later told me I was not more than 500 feet when I jumped. I still go hot and cold when I think of that jump.
It's interesting to note that German fighters such as the Me-109 were fitted with 20mm cannons from the start of the war. A few cannon-armed Spitfires and Hurricanes had flown in the Battle of Britain with mixed results. The RAF's reluctance to fit its fighters with cannons was partially because of a faulty mountings of the early 20mm, but also because of the opposition to cannons by a few ranking officers who believed that the RAF should stick with the .303 caliber machine guns. Bob Tuck believed that the 20mm cannons would enable RAF pilots to knock down more enemy planes and attack German ground targets with greater effect. There was quite a lot of argument before we got the OK to fit them as a matter of routine, Tuck recalled, but once decided, then it was forced ahead as quickly as the 20mm cannons could be turned out and fitted. Tuck's squadron was among the first to be re-equipped with the new cannon-armed Hurricanes. And it was in mid-March 1941, 257 Squadron began patrolling day and night to protect RAF training fields in Lincolnshire from German. In July 1941, Bob Tuck was promoted to acting wing commander and appointed wing leader at RAF Duxford, where he led fighter sweeps into northern France. After a brief trip to America with several other RAF Fighter Command pilots to raise awareness of Britain's war effort, he returned to a posting at RAF Beacon Hill as wing leader. It was while flying from Beacon Hill that Bob Tuck's last mission of the war occurred. On the 28th of January 1942, while on a low-level fighter sweep mission over northern France, his Spitfire was hit by enemy ground-based flak near Boulogne, and he was forced to crash land. Well, I hope you really found that of some interest. We're going to take a look at the life and times of Bob Tuck from 1942 when he crashed onwards in part 2 of my film. I wish you all the very best, take the greatest of care, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Cheers for now.